Admiral Maria Daniels stood at the viewport of the diplomatic vessel USS Horizon, watching the stars drift by as humanity's delegation approached the Galactic Conclave Station. The massive ring-shaped structure grew larger against the backdrop of swirling nebula clouds. Its gleaming silver surface reflected the light of the nearby star, making it look like a giant halo suspended in space. Maria's reflection stared back at her from the glass. Her uniform was pressed perfectly, medals and insignia carefully arranged according to protocol. Her graying hair was pulled back into a tight bun. The lines around her eyes had deepened during the 3 years of difficult negotiations with the conclave. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said a voice behind her. She turned to see Commander Paul Wright entering the observation deck. He was carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. "The station or the view?" Maria asked, accepting one of the cups with a grateful nod. "Both," Paul replied. "Though I'd enjoy it more if we weren't being treated like children every time we step onto it." Maria sipped her coffee and nodded. After 3 years of tense relations following first contact, these negotiations represented what might be Earth's final chance at peaceful integration into the interstellar community. But the talks had not been going well. "Any updates on today's agenda?" she asked. Paul activated his datapad. The blue glow highlighted the tired circles under his eyes. "They're still demanding access to all our military technology and development facilities," he said quietly. "And the proposed trade restrictions would cripple our economy within a decade." "They still think we're children who need supervision," Maria replied, her voice tight with frustration. 27 species represented in the conclave, and not one of them sees us as equals." Paul scrolled through more notes. "The Mendari delegate wants to place observers on all our colony worlds, for our protection and guidance, of course." "Of course," Maria echoed bitterly, "because clearly we can't be trusted to manage our own affairs." The door to the observation deck slid open again. Ambassador Eric Garrison entered, his tall frame silhouetted against the corridor lights. Usually Eric maintained perfect composure, the ideal diplomat. Today his face was flushed with anger. "Ambassador," Maria acknowledged, "you look like you could use something stronger than coffee." "You have no idea," Eric said, running a hand through his short blonde hair. "The Vexari representative just accidentally leaked our private medical data to the Trevelyan delegation to demonstrate our genetic inferiority, according to the message I intercepted." Paul set down his datapad with a sharp click. "That's the 3rd protocol violation in 2 days. That we know of," Eric added. "Who knows what else they've been doing behind our backs? Our negotiating position is being undermined at every turn." Maria turned back to the viewport. The conclave station was close enough now to see the docking bays and the ships of various alien designs coming and going. 3 years ago, humanity had looked at those ships with wonder and hope. Now, she felt only wariness. "We've been more than patient," she said. "We've accepted their condescension. We've overlooked their subtle insults. We've even tolerated their security measures that amount to nothing more than spying." "The president is losing patience," Eric said. "Public opinion on Earth is shifting. Too. People are starting to ask why we're begging for a place at a table where we're clearly not welcome." Maria watched as a Vexari cruiser passed by the horizon, 12 times the size of the human ship, its hull covered in the bony protrusions that characterized Vexari design. The message was clear. We are bigger. We are stronger. We are superior. "What about Plan Exodus?" Maria asked quietly. The 3 of them exchanged glances. Plan Exodus had been developed in secret during the first year of negotiations, when it became clear that the conclave might not be the benevolent organization it claimed to be. It was humanity's exit strategy. "All pieces are in place," Paul confirmed. "Defense grids are ready. The new production facilities are operational but dormant. Fleet headquarters reports that all classified ships are in position, cloaked and waiting." Eric nodded. "Diplomatically, we've prepared as well. All essential personnel across conclave space can be evacuated within 12 hours. Trade routes have been secured. Earth's economy can handle the isolation if necessary." "And the message?" Maria asked. "Drafted, approved, and ready to send," Eric replied. The President has given us full authority to initiate the plan if we deem it necessary. Maria took a deep breath. This decision would affect the future of all humanity. Walking away from the Galactic Conclave meant potential isolation, possible conflict, and an uncertain future among the stars. But staying meant accepting second-class status, surrendering autonomy, and submitting to the whims of species that saw humans as barely evolved primates. Let's give them one more chance, she decided. Today's session, if they continue with these tactics, if there's one more violation of protocol, one more demand that treats us as inferiors rather than equals, then we walk. Paul and Eric nodded in agreement. The tension in the room was palpable. The ship's communication system chimed. "Admiral Daniels," came the voice of Communications Officer Lisa Bennett. "We're receiving a transmission from the Conclave Station. The Vexari Supreme Legate Zorix is requesting a private meeting before the official session begins." Maria raised an eyebrow. "Did he state the purpose?" "Yes, Admiral. He says it's to discuss certain behavioral expectations for the human delegation during today's proceedings." The three humans looked at each other in disbelief. Behavioral expectations, as if they were unruly children needing to be told how to act in adult company. "Tell the Supreme Legate that we will see him at the scheduled session as agreed," Maria responded. "No private meetings." "Yes, Admiral." When the communication ended, Maria turned to her colleagues. Her decision was made. "Prepare my formal statement," she ordered. "And alert Earth Command, we're ready to walk out." Eric nodded, his diplomatic mask back in place, but determination burning in his eyes. "I'll make sure our delegation is ready." Paul activated his secure communication line. "I'll notify Fleet Command to stand by for Phase 1 of Exodus." As they left the observation deck, Maria took one last look at the Conclave Station. Humanity had traveled across the stars, hoping to find friends and allies. Instead, they found condescension and manipulation. The Conclave was about to learn that humans were not the primitive, compliant species they believed. They were about to make a grave mistake. The Conclave chamber was a vast amphitheater, designed to inspire awe in visitors. Curved tiers of seating rose up around a central speaking platform. Each delegation had its own section, marked with the symbol of their homeworld. The human section was the smallest and positioned farthest from the center. Ambassador Eric Garrison straightened his formal diplomatic jacket as he entered the chamber. Admiral Maria Daniels and Commander Paul Wright walked behind him. Their faces were calm, betraying none of the tension they felt inside. The other members of the human delegation followed silently. "They placed us even further back today," Paul whispered. Maria nodded slightly. Another petty insult. As they took their seats, Eric noticed the subtle changes in the room. Several security officers from the Vexari delegation had positioned themselves near the human section. The Mandari representatives were avoiding eye contact. The chamber's mood was tense, like the air before a storm. Supreme Legate Zorix of the Vexari Dominion stood at the central platform. His scaled skin gleamed under the lights, and his 12-foot height was made more imposing by his ceremonial armor. His four eyes scanned the chamber before settling on the human delegation. "Before we begin today's session," Zorix announced, his translator converting his hissing language into the standard conclave speech, "I must address certain concerns about the human delegation's approach to these negotiations." Eric felt Maria stiffen beside him. This was not on the agenda. The Conclave has extended unprecedented accommodation to humanity, Zorix continued. Yet our generosity has been met with resistance and unreasonable demands for equality that has not been earned. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegations nodded in agreement. Others looked uncomfortable, but remained silent. Furthermore, Zorix said, his upper eyes narrowing, "We have evidence that humanity has concealed crucial information about their military capabilities and resource development. Such deception cannot be tolerated." Paul leaned toward Maria. "That's a direct accusation of violating Article 7. They're trying to invalidate our position before we even speak." Maria's face remained impassive, but her eyes hardened. She gave Eric a subtle nod. Ambassador Garrison stood up. The chamber's audio system automatically amplified his voice as he requested to speak. The human delegation requests recognition. The Allurian first speaker, who served as the meeting's moderator, hesitated before acknowledging him. The human representative may address the conclave. Eric walked calmly to the speaking platform. He stood much shorter than Zorix, who moved aside with obvious reluctance. Honorable representatives of the Galactic Conclave, Eric began, his voice steady and clear. For 3 years, humanity has participated in these negotiations with patience and good faith. We have shared our culture, our science, and our vision for cooperation among the stars. He paused, looking around the chamber. Some delegates were paying close attention. Others were talking among themselves, barely bothering to listen. During this time, we have endured countless violations of diplomatic protocol. We have been subjected to demands that no sovereign species should accept. We have watched as our private information was accessed and shared without consent. This caught more attention. Several delegates stopped their side conversations. The Vexari representative speaks of deception. Eric continued. Let us speak plainly about deception. Yesterday, our medical data was leaked to demonstrate our supposed genetic inferiority. The day before, our trade proposals were altered before presentation to make them appear unreasonable. And today we are accused of hiding information by those who have repeatedly spied on our communications. Zorix hissed in anger. These are baseless accusations. The human distorts the truth. I have proof, Eric replied calmly. He activated. His datapad and the chamber's display screen showed communication logs and records. These documents show the systematic undermining of our position in these talks. They show a pattern of behavior that makes one thing very clear. The conclave never intended to welcome humanity as equals. The chamber erupted into noise. Some delegates were shouting denials. Others were demanding to see the evidence more clearly. The Allurian first speaker raised her translucent hands for silence. This is a serious accusation, Ambassador Garrison. What is your purpose in bringing this forward now? Eric's expression remained composed. Humanity came here in good faith. We have endured your condescension, your manipulations, and your duplicity. We have been patient while you've systematically violated every principle of diplomacy. He took a deep breath. This was the moment they had prepared for. As of this moment, Earth withdraws from these negotiations and will chart its own path forward. Oh, stunned silence fell over the chamber. No species had ever withdrawn from conclave negotiations. The concept was unthinkable to most of them. Zorix recovered first. He rose to his full height, towering over Eric. You primitive species cannot survive without our guidance. This petulant display only proves your immaturity. Eric simply smiled. We survived and thrived alone for thousands of years before meeting you. We'll continue to do so. The difference is that now, you've shown us exactly who our neighbors are. He turned and walked back toward the human delegation. Maria and Paul were already standing ready to leave. This is an outrage, shouted the Mindari representative. The humans cannot simply leave. Actually, we can, Maria said. Our ships are our own. Our colonies are our own. Our future is our own. We came seeking friendship. We found attempted control. There is nothing more to discuss. As the human delegation moved toward the exit, other representatives rushed to block their path. Please reconsider, urged the Trevalian observer, her feathered crest flattening in distress. The conclave offers protection. There are dangers in the galaxy that you do not understand. Paul faced her directly. We understand danger very well. Humanity was born in it, evolved in it. What we will not accept is subjugation disguised as protection. The Allurian first speaker's voice cut through the noise. If you leave now, there may not be another opportunity to join the conclave. You would be alone. Maria paused at the door and looked back at the chamber. We have been alone all along. You just made it official. The human delegation exited the chamber. As they walked through the corridors of the conclave station, Communications Officer Lisa Bennett activated her secure comm link. "Send the signal," Maria ordered quietly. Lisa nodded and entered a series of codes into her device. "Signal sent, Admiral. All human outposts and embassies across Conclave space have acknowledged. Operation Exodus is now active. Within hours, every human embassy, trade mission, and scientific exchange program throughout Conclave space began its careful withdrawal. Ships that had been hidden in plain sight moved into position. Defense systems that had remained dormant during the negotiations powered up. Back on the USS Horizon, the bridge was a center of focused activity. The ship had undocked from the Conclave station and was maintaining a safe distance. Phase 1. Complete, Lisa reported. "All personnel are evacuating according to protocol." Maria nodded. "And Phase 2? Defense grids are powering up across all colonies. The Sol system lockdown will be complete within 48 hours. Nobody mentioned Phase 3. They all knew what it entailed. Paul looked at the tactical display, watching as the human ships throughout Conclave space changed course and headed toward Earth-controlled territory. "Do you think they understand what's happening yet?" he asked. Maria watched the Conclave station growing smaller on the viewscreen. "No, but they will soon." The Galactic Conclave's High Security Council chamber was smaller than the main assembly hall. It had no grand architecture or ceremonial decorations. This was a room for serious matters, for emergencies and crises. Today, it was filled to capacity. "They're doing what?" The Illurian first speaker's translucent membranes pulsed with alarm as she reviewed the intelligence reports. Her normally calm demeanor was shattered. Fleet Commander Kiv of the Mendari Collective gestured to the holographic display at the center of the round table. The three-dimensional map showed movement patterns across multiple star systems. "The humans are mobilizing on a scale we didn't think possible," Kiv explained. His forearms moved in agitation as he manipulated the display controls. "They've activated industrial capabilities they never declared. Military assets are emerging from locations we never detected." The emergency session had been convened 3 days after the human withdrawal. What had started as annoyance at the humans' dramatic exit had quickly turned to concern, then to alarm. "Show me the Sol system again," ordered Supreme Legate Zorix. His earlier arrogance was noticeably diminished. The hologram shifted to show Earth's home system. Red markers appeared around the outer planets, representing new defense platforms. Yellow icons showed shipyards in orbit around Mars that had not been there before. Blue trails tracked the movement of vessels that had activated previously hidden propulsion systems. "This is impossible," said the Trevelyan observer. "Our monitoring systems would have detected these constructions." "Evidently not," replied Kiv. "The humans have stealth technology more advanced than we realized. They've been building while we watched, and we saw nothing." The door to the chamber slid open. Science Director Julia Evans entered. She was the only human still maintaining official contact with the Conclave. Her presence was tolerated only because someone needed to explain what was happening. Zorix turned all 4 eyes toward her. "You have kept secrets from us." Julia's face remained neutral as she took a seat at the table. "No more than you kept from us." "These military preparations," the Illurian first speaker said, pointing at the hologram. "They violate every agreement your species made during the negotiations." "The negotiations that you systematically undermined?" Julia asked. "The agreements that you never intended to honor? Those negotiations?" The council members shifted uncomfortably. The evidence Ambassador Garrison had presented before the walkout was now widely known. Several delegations had already issued formal apologies for their role in the diplomatic sabotage. "This is not just about defense," Kiv said, changing the holographic display again. "Human industrial output has increased by 7-fold in the past 72 hours. Mining operations have expanded on a dozen worlds. New factories have appeared on every human colony. How is this possible?" Julia looked at the display and nodded. "We've been running at 10% capacity during negotiations," she explained. "As a show of good faith, that restriction has been lifted." The implication struck the council like a physical blow. Humanity had been restraining itself, hiding its true capabilities while giving the Conclave every opportunity to accept them as equals. And the Conclave had squandered that chance. "These shipyards," protested the Vexari representative, pointing at the Mars orbit facilities. "These weapon platforms around Jupiter and Saturn, they would take years to build." Julia's smile was cold. "They took years to build. While we were negotiating, we were also preparing. Humanity hoped for the best but planned for the worst. This is the worst." The Trevelyan observer, normally quiet during council meetings, spoke up. "Your species has a phrase. Speak softly and carry a big stick. We thought you were speaking softly because you were weak. Now we see the stick." "A very big stick," Julia confirmed. "What are your intentions?" asked the Illurian first speaker directly. "Is this preparation for war?" Julia looked around the table at each council member. "Humanity has no desire for conflict. We wanted to join your community as partners. You wanted to treat us as children, as servants, as lesser beings. So we're going our own way." "And the military buildup?" pressed Kiv. "Is defensive," Julia replied. "We've seen how the Conclave treats those it considers primitive. We've heard the debates about whether humanity should be contained for the greater good. We know about the discussions of forced technological restrictions on Earth." Several council members looked away, unable to meet her gaze. Those discussions had indeed taken place, usually in private sessions without human knowledge. Or so they had thought. "You were spying on the council," Zorix accused. Julia shrugged. "We were gathering intelligence about potential threats, just as you were. The difference is, we were better at it." The chamber fell silent as the council processed this information. The humans had not just been hiding their military and industrial capabilities. They had been monitoring the Conclave's most secret deliberations. "What happens now?" asked the Trevelyan observer finally. "Now Earth establishes its own path in the galaxy," Julia said. "We'll defend our territory and interests. We'll trade with species who respect us. We'll continue to explore and expand." "And the Conclave?" asked the Illurian first speaker. "That's up to you," Julia replied. "You can accept the new reality and establish relations with Earth on equal terms. Or you can continue to see us as a problem to be managed. But I would advise against the latter approach." Kiv studied the holographic display showing the human defenses. "These are just the capabilities we can detect. What else are you hiding?" Julia smiled but said nothing. The silence stretched uncomfortably until a communication officer burst into the chamber. The young Mendari was clearly distressed. "Urgent. News from the border monitoring station," the officer reported. "A Vexari battle group has departed for the human colony in the Proxima Centauri system." All eyes turned to Zorix. The Supreme Legate's scales darkened in what might have been embarrassment. "A routine patrol," he claimed. "Nothing more." "A battle. Group of 7 warships is not a patrol," Kiv countered. "Who authorized this?" "The Dominion protects the interests of the Conclave," Zorix said defensively. "The humans need to understand they cannot simply walk away." Julia stood up. Her calm demeanor had vanished, replaced with cold anger. "You have made a terrible mistake. Supreme Legate, I suggest you recall your ships immediately." "Or what?" Zorix challenged, his earlier arrogance returning. "Your colony has minimal defenses. The battle group will demonstrate the consequences of defying the Conclave." Julia activated her personal communication device. "This is Evans. Inform Earth Command that the Vexari have launched a military operation against Proxima Centauri. Implementation of Protocol Guardian is now authorized." She looked up at the council members. "I suggest you all watch what happens next. It will be educational." The Illurian first speaker rose in alarm. "What is Protocol Guardian?" Julia walked toward the door. "You wanted to see what humanity is capable of. You're about to find out." As she left the chamber, the council erupted into arguments and accusations. The display still showed the approaching Vexari ships, moving steadily toward the human colony. No one noticed the small, previously undetected objects that had begun to move on the edge of the Proxima Centauri system, awakening from their dormant state in response to the approaching threat. Major Alan Gray stood on the observation deck of the defense platform Sentinel, orbiting silently above Proxima Centauri b. Through the reinforced viewport, he could see the colony below, a sprawling settlement of domes and towers that housed 30,000 human colonists. They had built a new life on this distant world, the closest habitable planet to Earth. Now that colony faced its first real threat. "Status report," Alan ordered, turning to face the command center. The circular room was filled with officers, at their stations all focused on their tasks with quiet intensity. Lieutenant Betty Young looked up from her console. "Vexari battle group still on approach. 7 ships total. 1 dreadnought, 4 cruisers, 2 support vessels. Current speed indicates arrival in 4 hours, 17 minutes. Alan nodded. "And our assets?" "All Guardian platforms are online and at full readiness," Betty replied. "The colony shield is powered and standing by. All non-essential personnel have been moved to the underground shelters as a precaution." "Communications from Earth Command?" "Latest transmission confirms authorization for Protocol Guardian," said Communications Officer Frank Miller. "We are cleared to engage if the Vexari cross the defensive perimeter." Alan walked to the central holographic display. It showed the Proxima Centauri system in detail. The approaching Vexari ships were marked in red, still far out but moving, steadily closer. Around the colony planet, small blue dots represented something the Vexari didn't know existed: the Guardian Defense Network. "Have they detected our defensive capabilities yet?" Alan asked. "Negative," replied Sensor Officer Greg Jones. "The stealth systems are functioning perfectly. As far as they can tell, we have minimal orbital defenses, just what we've allowed the Conclave to see during their survey missions." Alan smiled grimly. The Vexari were expecting to find a lightly defended colony, easy to intimidate with a show of force. They had no idea what was actually waiting for them. "Lieutenant Young, open a channel to the colony governor," Alan ordered. The main screen lit up with the face of Governor Sharon Lewis. Her expression was calm, but Alan could see the tension in her eyes. "Governor, the Vexari will be here in just over 4 hours," Alan reported. "All defense systems are ready. Your people should remain in the shelters until we give the all-clear." "Understood, Major," Sharon replied. "The colonists are prepared. They trust you to keep them safe." The screen went dark as the communication ended. Alan felt the weight of that trust. 30,000 lives depended on him and his team. Not just their lives, potentially the future relationship between humanity and the Galactic Conclave. "Sir," Frank called out. "Incoming transmission from the Conclave Security Council. They're requesting to observe the situation." Alan raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Put it through." The main screen divided into sections, showing the faces of various Conclave representatives. The Allurian first speaker was there, as was Fleet Commander Kiv of the Mendari. Even Supreme Legate Zorix of the Vexari was present, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Major Gray," the Allurian began, "we are monitoring the approach of the Vexari vessels toward your colony. Supreme Legate Zorix has agreed to order them to turn back." Zorix nodded stiffly. "There has been a misunderstanding. The battle group was not authorized by the full Dominion leadership." Alan looked at the alien faces on the screen. He could read the truth behind their sudden cooperative attitude. They were worried. Science Director Evans must have convinced them that something significant was about to happen. "I appreciate the gesture," Alan replied calmly. "But it's too late. The battle group is not responding to recall orders." This was true. The Vexari ships had maintained their course despite several transmissions from the Conclave. Either they couldn't hear the recall orders, or more likely they were choosing to ignore them. "We request that you show restraint," the Allurian said. "Perhaps allow the ships to approach, demonstrate their presence, and then depart. No weapons need to be fired." Alan shook his head. "That's not going to happen. The Vexari crossed a line when they launched this operation. Now they'll learn the consequences." "Your colony has minimal defenses," Zorix said, a hint of his old arrogance returning. Even if you refuse to stand down, you cannot hope to prevail against a full battle. Group. Alan smiled. Watch and learn, Supreme Legate. 3 hours passed in tense waiting. The Vexari ships continued their approach, now close enough to be visible on the long-range optical sensors. The massive dreadnought at the center of their formation was an impressive sight, its hull covered in the bone-like protrusions typical of Vexari design. They're entering the outer system boundary, Greg reported. Guardian targeting systems are tracking. Alan nodded. Send the final warning. Frank opened a channel to the approaching ships. Vexari vessels, this is Proxima Colony Defense. You are entering restricted space. Reverse course immediately or you will be fired upon. The response came quickly, the Vexari commander's voice filled with contempt. Human colony, this is Battlemaster Creve of the Dominion Dreadnought Inevitable Conquest. We are conducting authorized patrol activities. Lower your shields and prepare for inspection. Alan looked around the command center. Every officer was watching him, waiting for the order they knew was coming. They've made their choice, Alan said quietly. He turned to Betty. Lieutenant Young, activate Guardian System. Full deployment. Betty's fingers moved across her console. Guardian activated. All units responding. Across the Proxima Centauri system, thousands of objects that had appeared to be nothing more than space debris or small asteroids suddenly came to life. Each one was actually a kinetic interceptor, a simple tungsten rod with a small propulsion system and targeting computer. Cheap, nearly impossible to detect, and devastating when accelerated to relativistic speeds. The Vexari ships never even had time to realize they were under attack. On the holographic display, Alan watched as the Guardian system executed its attack. The kinetic interceptors accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, becoming unstoppable projectiles. They struck the Vexari vessels with perfect precision, targeting engines and weapon systems first, then structural weak points. Within less than a minute, the entire Vexari battle group had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris. No escape pods were launched. There had been no time. The command center was silent as everyone processed what had just happened. The conclave representatives on the screen stared in shock and horror. Status report, Alan ordered, breaking the silence. All targets neutralized, Betty reported, her voice steady despite the gravity of what they had just done. No damage to colony. Guardian system is recharging and repositioning. Alan turned to face the stunned conclave representatives. Let me be clear about what just happened. Your battle group was destroyed by our most basic defensive system. We deployed less than 10% of our available firepower. He looked directly at Zorix, whose scales had turned almost white with shock. Still think humanity is primitive, Supreme Legate? This is an act of war, Zorix stammered. No, Alan replied calmly. This was self-defense against an unwarranted act of aggression. Remember, you sent warships to threaten our colony. The Illurian first speaker found her voice. Such technology, such destructive capability. Why would you hide this? Transmission from Earth Command, Frank announced before Alan could answer. Put it through, Alan ordered. Major Gray, came the voice of Admiral Maria Daniels. Operation Lighthouse is authorized. Begin broadcast. Acknowledged, Admiral. Alan turned to Betty. Lieutenant Young, begin broadcast. Betty nodded. Transmission. From Earth Command, she reported. Operation Lighthouse is authorized. Begin broadcast, Alan confirmed. Across conclave space, every communication network simultaneously received the same message, a comprehensive catalog of human military capabilities previously kept classified, detailed specifications of weapon systems, production capacities, strategic resources, defense networks, the location and strength of every human military asset throughout explored space. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation to compare notes. When the broadcast ended, a simple message followed. This is who we are, this is what we can do, we still prefer peace. On the Sentinel's main screen, Alan watched the conclave representatives' faces as they received the broadcast. Their expressions ranged from shock to disbelief to fear. "Now you know the truth," Alan told them. "Humanity came to the stars hoping for friendship. Instead, we found arrogance and contempt. Today that ends. From now on, any species that wishes to deal with humanity will do so as equals, or not at all." 3 months had passed since the destruction of the Vexari battle group. 3 months of tense silence between humanity and the Galactic Conclave. 3 months during which both sides had carefully observed each other from a distance. Ambassador Christopher Taylor stood at the window of his office on Earth's orbital diplomatic station. The blue-green planet turned slowly below him, beautiful and fragile and yet far stronger than anyone had guessed. Ships moved in and out of the orbital lanes, some civilian, some military. All of them openly displayed the technology that had been hidden during the years of negotiation with the Conclave. There was no more need for secrets. A soft chime announced a visitor. Christopher turned as his assistant entered. "Sir, the Illurian delegation has arrived," she said. "They're waiting in the conference room." Christopher nodded. "Thank you, Susan. I'll be right there." He straightened his formal diplomat's uniform and took a deep breath. This meeting had been months in the making. After the revelation of humanity's true capabilities, the Conclave had gone through a political earthquake. Several species had demanded new leadership. Others had withdrawn from certain Conclave agreements. The balance of power that had existed for centuries was shifting. And now, the Illurian first speaker herself had come to Earth to speak directly with humanity's representatives. Christopher entered the conference room to find a small delegation waiting. At their center stood the Illurian first speaker, her translucent body glowing softly with inner light. Unlike previous meetings, she wore no ceremonial robes or insignia of office. She had come simply as herself. Even more surprising, she had come alone without guards or advisors, a gesture unprecedented in Conclave history. "Ambassador Taylor," she greeted him, her translator rendering her harmonics into perfect English. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." Christopher bowed slightly. "First speaker, welcome to Earth, or at least to Earth orbit." "A beautiful world," she said, looking out the viewport at the planet below. "We should have approached it with more respect from the beginning." Christopher gestured to the conference table. "Please sit. What can I offer you? We have synthesized refreshments suitable for Illurian biology." "Nothing, thank you," she replied, taking a seat. "I came to speak plainly, not to observe diplomatic niceties." Christopher sat across from her. "Then let's speak plainly. Why are you here?" The Illurian skin rippled with color, their equivalent of a sigh. "We have been fools," she admitted. "The Conclave has existed for millennia. We became accustomed to guiding younger species, protecting them from themselves. We never encountered one that had already survived its own worst impulses." Christopher nodded. His people had a long, violent history. Humanity had nearly destroyed itself several times, through war, environmental damage, and social conflict. But they had survived and learned from each disaster. "You concealed your strength not out of deception, but out of courtesy," the first speaker observed. "You wanted to be welcomed for your potential, not feared for your power." "We still do," Christopher replied. "But we won't be patronized and we won't be controlled." The Illurian nodded. "The Conclave has seen the error of its approach. I come to offer a new beginning. Not membership in the Conclave, not yet, but a treaty between equals." She placed a small device on the table. It projected a holographic document between them. "This is a proposed agreement," she explained. "It acknowledges humanity's sovereign right to self-determination. It establishes protocols for future diplomatic and cultural exchange. Most importantly, it recognizes Earth as an independent power, neither subject to Conclave authority nor isolated from the galactic community." Christopher studied the document carefully. It was remarkably different from previous Conclave agreements. There were no hidden clauses, no carefully worded restrictions. It was straightforward and respectful. "What about the Vexari?" he asked. The destruction of their battle group had created a significant diplomatic problem. Supreme Legate Zorix has been removed from power, the first speaker replied. The new Vexari leadership wishes to express formal regret for the unauthorized military action against your colony. They ask for a separate meeting to discuss reparations. Christopher raised an eyebrow in surprise. The Vexari were not known for admitting mistakes. And the other species of the Conclave? Do they all support this new approach? Most do, the Allurian said honestly. Some remain fearful of humanity's power. Others are curious about your technology and culture. All recognize that the old way of doing things must change. Christopher stood and walked to the viewport again. Earth turned below, unaware of how close it had come to conflict with the galaxy's oldest civilization. I will need to consult with Earth's government, he said. But speaking personally, I believe this is the beginning we had hoped for all along. Had I? Allurian rose and joined him at the window. Your science director Evans said something interesting during the crisis. She said that humans hope for the best but plan for the worst. Is that a common philosophy among your people? Christopher smiled. It served us well through our history. A wise approach, the first speaker acknowledged. One the Conclave could learn from. 3 days later, after extensive consultation with Earth's government, Christopher found himself in the newly constructed Treaty Hall. Representatives from Earth and 27 alien species gathered to witness the signing of what was being called the Equal Status Treaty. Colonel Joe Benson watched the signing ceremony from the observation deck of the newly commissioned USS Deterrent, the first human vessel to openly display the full extent of Earth's technology. The massive ship hung in orbit above the diplomatic station, a visible reminder of humanity's strength. Do you think it will last? Asked his XO, Commander Kelly Martinez, as they watched the ceremony on the main screen. Benson considered the question carefully. I think they finally understand us. Not just our weapons or our industry, but our determination. They needed to see that we would walk away rather than compromise our independence. And now? Kelly asked. Now we show them what humanity can do as an ally instead of an enemy. He smiled. That will be the bigger surprise. Below, on the diplomatic station, Christopher Taylor and the Allurian first speaker pressed their hands to the treaty document simultaneously. The agreement was officially activated, its terms immediately coming into effect across human and conclave space. Today marks a new chapter in galactic history, the first speaker announced to the gathered representatives, not one of dominance or submission, but of mutual respect and cooperation. We have much to learn from each other. Christopher nodded. Humanity came to the stars looking for new friends, new knowledge, and new opportunities. We're pleased to finally find them. As the ceremony concluded, signals went out across human space. Defense platforms powered down to standby mode. Military vessels changed their alert status. The message was clear. Humanity remained vigilant but was ready for peace. On distant colony worlds, humans looked up at alien skies and wondered what would come next. The galaxy had proven more complex and dangerous than they had imagined, but also full of potential. They had secured their place among the stars not through submission, but through strength and determination. The Galactic Conclave had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity. It was not a mistake they would make again. And in that painful lesson lay the foundation for a true and lasting peace. As Christopher looked around at the alien representatives now mingling with humans as equals, he recalled an old saying from Earth: peace through strength. Humanity had proven its strength. Now it was time to build the peace.